Indulekha, are there others going to be coming later? So we don't have to do this again. Could you all come forward? All of you come forward. Okay. We'll see if we have to do it again or not. Because people are going to come behind us. You know how it is. They'll come fashionably late. Okay, thank you. Would you like to know what this evening's topic is? Because I just found out. Okay, so the topic is Anartha Nivritti. Anartha Nivritti. Where does that term come from? There's a nice verse in the teachings of Rupa Goswami. Anybody here knew enough that they don't know who was Rupa Goswami? Should I say who was Rupa Goswami? Okay. Rupa Goswami, hearing from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the science of devotional service, wrote a book on the science of devotional service, and specifically Bhakti Rasa, the mellows of devotional service, Bhakti Rasa Amrita, the nectar of the mellows of devotional service, and the final word is Sindhu, an ocean of nectar of the mellows of devotional service, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And in that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu there's three main divisions of subject matter, the three main stages of bhakti: sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. So we're way over here in the sadhana bhakti stage, that when done properly they lead to spontaneous devotional service. Regulative leads to purification, leads to spontaneous bhava. And mixing of bhava ecstasies transforms into prema bhakti. So that's the subject matter of Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. And one of the verses in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is a verse that indicates 9 of the stages of bhakti, and one of those stages is Anartha Nivritti. That's our topic, is Anartha Nivritti. It's stage number 4 out of 9. And it's something that should concern all of us, because it's something that we need to pass through in order to get to number 5. Number 5 is steady, nishtha bhakti, and prior is unsteady, anishtata. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are anishtata. Anishtata is like a sine curve. You know that one? Unsteady. So we need to pass through. It's standard. Don't feel like you're a bad devotee because your bhakti is unsteady. It's just standard. And the remedy is Anartha Nivritti, stage number 4. But stage number 4 comes after stage 1, 2, and 3. So they're not like, here's a bucket, and then you move into that bucket, and then you move into that bucket. It's not like that. That is to say, Anartha Nivritti starts even at the very beginning, and it continues in the further and further stages, so it's not like you graduate from 2nd grade and you go to 3rd grade, and you finish 3rd grade and you go to 4th grade. It's not like that. It's described that the bhakti creeper is such that whatever is present in the prior stage is also present in the 2nd stage, plus. So, like, if your parents took a picture of you when you were a little baby, probably did, and that baby body's gone. Now there's another body. So we leave behind the prior body, the prior stage, and take another one, take another one. The point I'm making is bhakti isn't like that. Our acharyas describe. It's their sequence, but it's not like you leave something behind and you go to the next one, you go to the next one. I hope I'm making myself clear. So the beginning stage, stage number 1, is some preliminary faith. Preliminary faith in Sanskrit is adau shraddha. It could mean in the beginning there's some faith, but the faith can be as simple as there's another reality. Beyond the day-to-day, there's something of greater meaning, greater significance. There's a higher reality. I want to connect with that. I want to know what that is and connect with that. That's my hankering. To go beyond the moment, go beyond the external, and go into the eternal. Preliminary. I don't know what it is. I know something exists out there. I'd like to connect with that. Preliminary faith. And then Krishna, seeing that, he may send sadhu. So sadhu sangha. No, number 2. And sadhu brings news of the realm of transcendence. And by being connected with the realm of transcendence, the sadhu passes on that connection to the person with some preliminary faith. And then comes step number 3. Boom, boom, boom. It may not happen so quickly, but in the association of sadhus, what do? You do what sadhus do. Bhajana kriya. Bhajana kriya means activity. Bhajana kriya is activities of bhajan, of devotional service, devotional practice. Devotional service in the practicing stage. So that's number 3. And when there's devotional service and practice, the next thing naturally happens, and that is there's cleansing of the heart. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described it in his Shikshastakam. Cheto darpana marjanam. Marjanam is cleansing. Cheta darpana. Your consciousness becomes cleansed. The mirror of the heart becomes cleansed. The mirror of the mind becomes cleansed. Marjanam. There's cleansing. Anartha Nivritti. So that's the Anartha. That's the stage that we're discussing this evening. Our acharyas describe the anarthas that we're carrying within us. It's not just from this lifetime. We had a whole stockpile of anarthas. So that the Sanskrit breakdown is artha means something wanted, and anartha is something unwanted. Generally the word artha, as in dharma, artha, kama, moksha, artha commonly, because it's the way that things that people want, something wanted is economic development. Artha. Prosperity. Artha. Getting what you want in the material sense. Artha. And for most people, Krishna says, and it's true, most people engage in dharma because they want the fruits of dharma. They want piety. And with piety, you get the fruits of piety, which is, in this life you prosper, and in the next life you go to the good place. That's the destination of those that are dharmic. You go to heaven. In this life you prosper, things that are necessities of life, they're supplied on the strength of Dharma. And heavenly destination after this one. And Anartha is something unwanted. So Anartha Nivritti is eradication of things that are unwanted. But when we look at the bhakti process, the goal is not simply attaining heaven. The goal is not just attaining heaven, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, heaven, even beyond heaven, there's 4 more planetary systems above heaven, and Krishna says we shouldn't aspire for that either. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. Brahmaloka. Below Brahmaloka is Tapaloka. Below Tapaloka is Janaloka. Below Janaloka is Maharloka. Below Maharloka is Swargaloka. But striving for heaven, what to speak of even striving for Brahmaloka, Krishna says no. Right in Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because therein repeated birth and death take place. Krishna's advocacy is to go beyond the cycle of birth and death, beyond samsara, beyond the good place and avoid the bad place. Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God. Very clear in Bhagavad Gita. So when the goal is the kingdom of God, Anartha is anything that's other than the kingdom of God. It means whatever it is that you do, dharmic, you dedicate it to Krishna. You offer to Krishna. Yad karoshi, yad asnasi, yad jahosi, dadasi yat yat tapasyasi konteya, tat kurashva, madarpanam. Madarpanam is, you worship me with whatever you do. Whatever the dharmic things are that you do. It doesn't say break dharma or trash it, neglect it. Rather, that's not the goal. Live your life according to the codes of dharma and dedicate yourself to the ultimate purpose. All the while, manmana, bhava mad bhakto, madhyaji, there it is again, yaja, madhyaji, mam namaskuru. That's Krishna's advocacy. So, things that are wanted is that, and things that are unwanted is the other. And the heart, once again, the heart is infested with so many of those unwanted things, not just from this lifetime. So even before you do something, there's cleansing to be done. The innocence of a child is one sense simply the maturing of material tendencies haven't developed yet. But the material tendencies are already there in the heart. Anyway. So I'm going to make 2 more references and we're done. One of those references is from Srimad Bhagavatam. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's in the 2nd chapter of 1st canto, there's an important verse that specifically speaks about Anartha Nivritti. That's our subject. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Abhadra is similar to anartha. Bhadra means auspicious. And abhadra means inauspicious. So all that is inauspicious within the heart, nashta, is eradicated. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. How? Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Nitya literally means eternal. The Prabhupada makes it easy and says regularly. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Seva, we know, it's service. Bhagavata is a derivative of Bhagavan. There's Bhagavan and there's Bhagavata. Bhagavata means in relation to Bhagavan. Prabhupada explains in the commentary, there's two Bhagavatas. There's the book, Bhagavata, and there's the person, Bhagavata. The person, Bhagavata, is the one who lives by the book. They speak it, they live it, they, inside and outside, they're perambulatory Bhagavatas. So, rendering service, sevaya, regularly to the Bhagavatas, person and book Bhagavata, nashta, prayeshu abhadreshu, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, nityam Bhagavata sevaya, Bhagavati, uttama shloke, bhaktir bhavati, naishtaki, bhaktir bhavati, bhavati, bhakti arises, naishtaki, there's this nishtha. We just heard about going from the Anartha Nivritti to the nishtha stage in one verse. That was really fast, wasn't it? It just describes the process. It may take a while. And applying the process requires sadhana. That's what we're doing. Sadhana bhakti that helps us eradicate unwanted things to get to the stage of steadiness. I'll assume in different stages we're all doing some sadhana. That means we're all maybe in a preliminary stage or an intermediate stage, maybe beyond the intermediate stage. We're all in this Anartha Nivritti process. So it doesn't mean we abandon the bhajana kriya or abandon the sadhusanga. It just means it's the maturing of those. And the effect is Anartha Nivritti. Now one more reference and we're done. So this one more reference is from a book written by one of our stalwart acharyas named Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Great acharya, great commentator, wrote a summary on these 9 stages of bhakti. So I've described 4, actually 5. The preliminary is faith, next one is sadhusanga, next one is bhajana kriya, next one is anartha nivritti, and then comes nishtha. And there's 4 more after that. So he's written a book that describes those stages, one by one by one. And in the it's chapter 3 of the title of the book is Madhurya. Madhurya means the sweetness of Kadambini. So it's a book describing those 9 stages. In chapter 3, he describes anarthas, unwanted things in the heart, arise from 4 different sources. They're identified according to the source. This type, that type, the other type. So, the first source is really obvious. Anarthas that arise from sin. Unwanted things in the heart that arise from past sin. And the process of devotional service is so strong that it can cleanse away all those anarthas very quickly. Those that arise from past sin. Then there's number 2. Anarthas in the heart that arise from past piety. Wait a minute. How do you get unwanted things in the heart that arise from past piety? Keeping it really simple. There's a tendency to be the enjoyer of the fruits of one's past piety. That's the problem. It's not the fruit of piety. It's to be the enjoyer of the fruit of piety. That's an unwanted thing in the heart. Bhakti is so powerful, it can cleanse that. Because then we offer the fruits of piety in service to Krishna, when bhakti is strong. But bhakti isn't strong, past piety alone can be a problem. Try to be the enjoyer of it. And then, so bhakti isn't very important. Sin, piety, those sources of anarthas. Then the third is from the devotional service itself, the rendering of service. Those of you that are a little familiar with nectar devotion, you know there's 64 items of service that are recommended. There's many, many, many more, but each of those are primarily related to worship. So if there's impurity that arises from worship, the good news is the chanting of the holy name is very powerful, and the chanting of the holy name can eradicate that. Actually, it's the prior to also, specifically the holy name. So the problem then is when there's offense to the holy name. What do you do when there's offense to the holy name? With the anarthas that arise from offenses of the holy name. What's the antidote? And the antidote is terminate or diminish and eventually terminate offenses against the holy name. And so it's important to know what offenses against the holy name are, and when there are offenses against one particular offense or another out of the 10 or combination, that you know what they are and you know the antidote. Like a physician, right? How many different types of illnesses are there? More than 10, that's for sure. Yeah. But if you're a physician, you need to know which is the malady and what's the treatment for the malady. So the expert physician, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, gives remedy. And it, simply put, each one of the 10 offenses is there's something over on this side. The first one is sadhu ninda. Sadhu ninda, vilification of sadhu. So you go over on this side of the pan scale and you honor sadhu. You respect sadhu. And it's the counteraction of that offense or that tendency, and so forth. You put something that's just the opposite. Considering the names of the demigods, the devas, as equal to or independent of the name of Vishnu. So don't go over there, go over here. The special position of the transcendental name of the personality of Godhead. Educate yourself in the matter of what the holy name is, and don't make the mistake of thinking other names or other sound vibrations are equal. Thinking that the chanting of the holy name is meant as a karma kanda practice. I did some bad things, so now I'm going to do some good things to counteract the bad things. It's not like that. It's not a counteractive process. It's not a atonement process or prayashchitta process. It's not a karma kanda process to nullify the bad karma and make good karma. That's not what the chanting of the holy name is, and so forth. The proper understanding of the holy name. And it takes some time, because each of those 10 offenses, there's tendencies within us, and those tendencies have a way of coming out. What's inside comes out. Because it's inside. It comes out. Then there has to be vigilance and attentiveness. In fact, Vishnu says the root of all of them can be cured by one of them, which is attentiveness. Really simple. When chanting, be attentive to hearing the sound vibration. And from that one thing, the others are effectively and swiftly corrected. Don't do that one thing, the other things will linger. In fact, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a statement that says, one can go on chanting the holy name for Bohu Janma, many, many, many lifetimes. But one will not get the fruit of that chanting if one continues making offenses for many lifetimes. The power of the holy name is there, but offenses block the power even of the holy name. So Anartha Nivritti, most effective is to curtail the source of, you're going to grow a garden, you have to pull some weeds. You don't just clip the tops of the weeds, you have to pull the root. And then some more weeds grow, and you just keep pulling weeds until, however long it takes, until the weeds are diminished and the thing you want to grow gets the nourishment of the water and the sunlight. Anyone that's done gardening knows what I'm talking about. How fast do weeds grow compared to the things you want to grow? Abundant, fast. And just let them go, and it's just, they take all the water and all the sunlight, and the things you want to grow get minimized, like anything. And there's one more source of anarthas, unwanted things. And it's, I'm keeping it simple here, but it's, supposing you get a little success in devotional service, a little successful, and then you try to be the enjoyer of that little success in devotional service. You get some position, or you get some honor, or some distinction. Somebody says, oh, you cooked such a nice feast, or you organized such a nice festival, or you sang kirtan so nicely, or something or other. And you want to be the enjoyer of that praise, or that position, or that recognition, or something. Labha, puja, pratishta. But bhakti is, when carried out carefully, one can not fall prey to that anartha. But bhakti has to be strong. Bhakti can eradicate that, but bhakti has to be strong. So those are, according to chapter 3 of Vishwanath Chakravarti, there's lots of detail that's described there. I'm keeping it simple because of circumstance. But it's something that we need to be aware of, that we're entering into this stage of bhakti, beginning, intermediate, or wherever we are. And we need to do all of that before we can get to the stage of steady. And the stage of steady, it's important, does not mean that anarthas are now zero. It means, the stage of steady means, bhakti is so strong, although there are these tendencies lingering, bhakti is so strong they don't manifest. Largely. Bhakti is so strong they don't manifest. And you continue to go, and anarthas become eradicated more and more and more and more until they're completely gone. But the stage of steadiness, nishtha, is when they're prayeshu, nashta prayeshu, from that verse that I quoted earlier. Almost gone, almost nil, or greatly diminished. Diminished enough so that, and the bhakti is strong enough that they don't manifest. It's just steady bhakti. Then comes the subsequent stages. Taste, attachment, bhava, and prema. Those are the final four. So advice for sadhakas, all of you. It's an easy question. Which comes first, the horse or the cart? The horse pulls the cart, right? Now you don't have the cart pull the horse. The horse pulls the cart. So the horse that pulls the cart is faith, association of devotees, and devotional practice. You say just devotional practice because that's the fruit of the other two. With faith. Devotional practice with faith. In the association of devotees. That's the horse. Understand that as you do that attentively, carefully, consciously, Anartha Nivritti is going on. So it's a mistake, say it the other way, it's a mistake to become Anartha Nivritti conscious instead of Krishna conscious. Be Krishna conscious and that'll take care of the Anartha Nivritti stage. It's important to know what's in the cart. But don't think the cart is going to pull the horse. Make sure the attention goes in the right place. Towards Krishna, manmana, bhava madbhakto, madhyaji mam namasguru. Do all those things for Krishna. And the unwanted things, good to know what they are, and good to know what the in your garden, what the creeper or the plant or the desirable thing that you want to grow is, what it looks like, even in the young stage, so you don't mistake it as a weed and pull that out. You know what the weeds are, and you pull the weeds out. This Anartha Nivritti is sometimes compared to weeding of a garden. There's a lot to say. I could say a lot more, but that's a preliminary. I'll say one more. Third reference, besides the Canto 1, Chapter 2 verse, this Madhurya Kandamini reference. Somebody here is from Orissa, and have you attended Jagannath Rath Yatra?
Yes.
Yes. So, did you go to Jagannath Rath Yatra before the Rath Yatra began and you observed the Gundicha cleansing?
I don't remember exactly what the...
Okay. Gundicha Marjana is the pastime that's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so, it's very practical. Before Jagannath leaves the Jagannath temple, Lord Chaitanya and his associates would go to the Gundicha temple, which is down the other end of Grand Road, because that's where Jagannath goes at the end of the Rath Yatra procession. He doesn't go right back to the temple. He stays over there for some number of days. So before he goes there, Lord Chaitanya and his associates, it's a whole chapter describes this pastime where chanting constantly in a loud, enthusiastic voice, they would go with brooms and sweep and collect dust and sand and straws and make piles. And Lord Chaitanya's pile was greater than all the other devotees' piles put together. And then after doing it, they go cleanse the temple again, second time. They gathered water from Narendra Sarovar, carried in buckets, clay buckets, clay pots. And there was a line where they take the empty clay pot to Narendra Sarovar, pass it to the next, saying, Krishna, 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 all the way down. And then another clay pot, and then the full clay pot would come back, and then they splash all the water in the clay pots all over the Gundicha temple to make it thoroughly spotless. Why? Because when you make a place very clean, it's inviting to go there. They're preparing the temple for Lord Jagannath to come by making it clean. And the comparison is, similarly, you make your heart clean It becomes an inviting place for Krishna to sit. Of course, he's already there. And unfortunately, our hearts are not clean. There's anarthas. So then, to make consciousness of Krishna awaken, make the heart clean. And there's a nice description that the dust represents this, and the straws represent that, and the sand represents something else. And so there's different categories of unwanted things in the heart that one needs to be. But you don't discriminate. I'll gather the straws, and you can gather the dust, and someone else can gather the sand. It's just the wholesale cleansing. But there's different things that are in our hearts that don't belong there. At least, in a Krishna conscious condition. So that cleansing of the Gundicha temple represents, or it symbolizes, or it is like making the heart clean, Anartha Nivritti. And our primary means of making the heart clean is the chanting of the holy name. And the chanting of the holy name is to be done in a way where we're avoiding offenses. We're keeping the horse first, but we're avoiding the offenses so that the horse stays first. The chanting of the holy name, striving for offenseless chanting. That's our primary means. Now, this other method mentioned in the Bhagavatam is Bhagavata Seva, serving the book and the person Bhagavat. So they go together, the name and the book. One without the other is incomplete. Actually, the holy name stands on its own, but because we're misguided, we require also the scripture, the book, the Bhagavata, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. We require. One makes the heart clean, the other guides our activity. It also makes our heart clean. And therefore, we were given both. Our acharyas, in disciplic succession, they give us the holy name, and they give us the book, the teachings of Krishna, or the teachings about Krishna Bhakti, found in Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's what we're all doing. Anartha Nivritti at one stage or another. Focused on bhajana kriya or sadhana bhakti. Along with our prescribed duties, we do those activities that are going to help us keep consciousness of Krishna at the center while we're doing our duties, whatever they are, at different stages of life. That's an introduction to the topic that I was asked to speak about, Anartha Nivritti. Many of you probably know a lot of these things already. Some of you it's kind of new. The purpose of such knowledge is to be aware of what the path of bhakti looks like and how to perform it. It's not just information. It's guidelines or guidance, how to carry out your devotional practice so that you can go further and go further and go further. Sincerity in applying these things, focusing on hearing the mantra, focusing on hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, applying the message of Srimad Bhagavatam as far as we've understood it, and keeping the goal, Krishna, attaining shelter of Krishna in loving service. That's what we're doing, Anartha Nivritti. And then it leads to steadiness, taste, attachment, spontaneous feelings of love, and pure love for Krishna. Any discussion? Yes.
You talked about sense My wife tells me a lot of sins. I do have a lot of sins.
Oh.
How can I reduce the sins?
How can you reduce the sin or the reactions to the sin? Sin or the reaction to the sin? Which is your preference?
Sins.
I never said that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just want to clarify it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Sin or reaction to sin?
Sins.
Both. Why not? Sin itself. Well, okay. Sin itself. I've never been asked that question. It's a nice question. But the response is we need to know we need to know the difference between right and wrong, sin and not sin, and the standard of what is to be done. That's dharma, and other than that is adharma, sin. And so we need to know, if we want to become free from sin, we need to know what is to be done and what is not to be done. So how do we know what's to be done, what's not to be done? We require descending knowledge. A practical example is, supposing you get one of these new smartphones or an iPhone or one of those doodads, and within the box there's an operator's manual. Some people like me don't have patience to read those operator manuals. But if you want to know how to use the smartphone, it's in the operator's manual. It comes along with the product, is how to use it. But supposing you don't know how to use it. Supposing you think, well, I have a walnut here and I'd like to get the walnut, so you use it to crack the walnut. You might break the iPhone. Maybe you get the walnut, but you won't. The iPhone doesn't have that purpose. Similarly, according to Bhagavad Gita, along with the creation, Krishna gives dharma. How do you use the creation? How do you act in a dharmic way in relation to creation? You have to read the scripture. And even better is to have a teacher of the scripture, so they can explain, this means such and such. And they even model it for you. There's what it looks like. Oh, that's what it is. Okay. That's the standard of dharma. So we need teachers and teachings to know what is sin, so that, second, is through the association of that qualified teacher and the teachings, we become inspired to live our lives accordingly. You may know what's to be done and not do it, and do the adharmic thing because there's weakness. So strength to do the right thing is needed along with doing the right thing. Knowing what it is. So therefore, sadhu sangha, holy association, is very helpful to overcome sin. Valmiki, nice example. Valmiki, before he was Valmiki, what was he? He was a robber. But through the association of Narada, he became Valmiki, who gave him the name, but also the disposition to truly take shelter of the name. Even he couldn't say the name. He couldn't say Rama. He could only say Mara. But through association of holy people, one can have the strength to do what we know we should be doing. So those two things. We need to know the difference between right and wrong, and we need good association. And then we can become free. I mean, preliminary faith needs to be there, otherwise we're not going to take that association or even care what's right or wrong. Some preliminary faith.
Thanks.
Thank you for a nice question. And I know you're just teasing about your wife. She's... Anything else? Vayahari.
Maharaj, I guess I heard this in similar lecture that you gave when you were talking about the third kind of anarthas that come from aparats. we spoke about two more things, the sadhana sadhya Brahma and the Virodhi Vishaya Brahma. I'm trying to figure, I didn't understand if these two are the symptoms of the atrats or they cause the atrats.
Say the two again.
Sadhana sadhya Brahma and Virodhi Vishaya Brahma.
I'm not recalling the reference, so I can't answer your question. I'd have to go examine the text and respond after examining the text. Yes.
I came a little late, but a question. I mean, you said about reaching that steady state, and I'm sure reaching the steady state is too far. I mean,
That's not too far.
We are trying to achieve that.
Get on
But-
board.
but how do you control your mind when you have all these anarthas always keep coming, and this association is one thing that you notice, which we can't constantly maintain. How can you even achieve that? I mean, how can you even try to achieve that? I'm not even going to the steady state right now.
Well, let's go to chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita, and a starting point, because your question is how do you control so many thoughts in the mind? And Krishna's starting advice is you tolerate. Tangsta tiksha svabharata. Part of tolerating is to understand what the goal is and who you are. So if I think I'm the mind, I'm certainly going to pay attention to the mind because that's who I am. So why would I tolerate the mind if I think it's me? I'd invest in it. But if I have an understanding that it's not me, and there's some chatter going on, but I'm the one listening to the chatter, it's there's the chatter and there's the listener. The seat of consciousness is me. I'll go through it again. This is now Jiva Goswami. A fire or a candle is both luminous and illuminating. It is light and it lightens up other objects in the room so you can see other objects because the light comes from the lamp or the candle. Similarly, the soul is conscious and consciousness. We're conscious, and we're conscious of things, like the mind. And I am not the mind. So, knowledge is a beginning point, it's not the end point. Knowledge leads to detachment. In Vedic language, jnana, vairagya are it's a couplet, they go together. When I don't know, then I can think that I'm my mind. And that's where I live, in my mind. I'm feeling this and thinking that and desiring that, thinking, feeling, willing. That's me. Krishna said, starting advice is detach yourself from that misconception and understand that you're the conscious self and it's not you. Because over there is this attraction, it's duality. Attraction, repulsion. Happy, sad. Honor, dishonor. Pleasure, pain. Light and dark. Up and down. Day and night. Wet and dry. The world of duality seen through the lens of the mind is I like it, I don't like it. Gives me pleasure, it gives me displeasure, or somewhere in between, a mix. But that's not us. Self-realization begins. If you're here because there's some interest in self-realization, higher consciousness, it's a starting point. There's further stages of the mind becoming controlled, but it starts with, you withdraw consciousness from asat and invest consciousness in sat. So it's needed to be known what's the difference between the two, and you don't get a lobotomy. That's one way to take care of the thoughts in the mind. But we don't. That's not our process. Our process is invest in Sat, and that Asat over there, I recognize what it is, and in ways that's needful, I'll deal with it. But otherwise, I'm investing. I direct my mind towards Sat. When you you become practiced at addressing your mind towards Sat, the disturbances of the mind subside. So the initial is you tolerate while investing in Sat. And it's a struggle, especially in the beginning, because we're used to, hey, wait a minute, you can't neglect me, I'm in charge. I make all the decisions around here, what are you doing? Do you have a Srimad Bhagavatam set in your home? Not yet? Well, someday get a set, and you know how to find Srimad Bhagavatam online. So go to Canto 5, Chapter 6, texts 2 through 5. And they're really strong instructions about don't listen to the mind. Because that's your greatest enemy. When you control the mind, it can become your best friend, your greatest asset. Because you have to use the mind in life. You have to use the mind in any system of yoga, and certainly in bhakti yoga, manmana. You don't need a lobotomy. You need to direct the mind towards Sat, towards Krishna. And the noise over there with the mind, with so many thoughts and desires and remembrances and hankerings and dushparena anulena cha, in Bhagavad Gita language, burns like fire. Anula. Attraction for the objects of the senses, indulging the senses and the objects of the senses, what that one has attraction for, because in the mind there's an attraction. Burns like fire. That's this Canto 5, Chapter 6. Don't trust the mind. Don't make your mind your friend. Control the mind, but starts with tolerate, and then the steps are there. Yes.
Vishnu Maharaj. So, Maharaj, of the anarthas that we have, is it best for us to focus on one anartha and try to work on it to minimize it, or?
It's best to focus on the horse. As long as you have focus on the horse, that's the bhajana kriya done with attention, then you can be aware of what's in the cart. And now I'm responding. I understand you didn't. I'm emphasizing, because there is a tendency to become Anartha Nivritti conscious instead of Krishna, or Anartha conscious instead of Krishna conscious. So I'm not saying you do that. I'm emphasizing don't do that. And what the primary focus should go to is hearing, or attentiveness. When you're trying to focus on attentiveness, very quickly you'll notice what he just said. I can't focus. My mind's all over the place. If you're not trying to be attentive, you won't notice it. If you're trying to be attentive, it's painfully noticeable. And then you focus on attentiveness, and in the course of your, not just while chanting, because these activities are when doing everything. Yeah. Focusing on one of them is the inattentiveness while chanting is where your main focus should go. Now, in Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami gives two others that are of paramount importance. But other acharyas speak in other ways, so it's hard to say. Sadhu Ninda is first on the list for a reason. So the opposite of Sadhu Ninda is Vaishnav Seva. It's one of the 5 most potent activities. So how you, or each one of us, interact with those who are Vaishnavas in the mood of seva and not in the mood of vilification or criticizing or fault-finding. It's very detrimental to bhakti, fault-finding. And the mind tends to do that. So go to the other side of render service unto. Doesn't mean we turn our power of discrimination in the off position, but we turn to the Vaishnav Seva in the on position. One could say another one of those 10 offenses, Guru Avagya, is of primary importance. If one makes offense in relation to spiritual master by neglecting the instructions, as Avagya means neglecting, by neglecting instructions of the spiritual master, then how is one going to progress in any area? You may try to do the other eradication of anarthas. So that's of primary importance. Taking shelter and having faith, intrinsic faith in carrying out the instructions of the spiritual master, like Prabhupada did with Bhaktisiddhanta, that was his spiritual strength. He said it himself, but it was very obvious in the course of his life. So those are important ones. And from improving in any one of those, so it gives strength to the other ones. It gives strength to bhakti. Someone else. You had your hand up? Yes. Yes, please.
Maharaj, is there any practical way to detach minds and what goes on in your mind and with all the thoughts that comes from the mind? Is there any way to detach it or not feel affected by it? Is there any practical way to do it?
I'll say two different things. I've already mentioned one, but I'll say it again. Focus on Sat. Where if you place value in something, that's where your attention is going to go. If you don't place value in something, your attention isn't going to go there. Supposing somebody places value in wealth, that's where their attention goes. Supposing someone doesn't place value in wealth, like, we'll give an example, Maharaj Ambarish. He had wealth that surpassed the wealth of the demigods, that rivaled the wealth of Vaikuntha, and he was totally detached. He had it because of his spiritual merit. He had it, but he wasn't attached to it. How was it that he was not attached to it? Because he was attached to Krishna. Later in that chapter, 9th canto, it describes the citizens were like that too, because him. And the method of how the citizens became qualified like that was the verses say they had become accustomed to hearing about and describing the glories of the Supreme Lord. I'm addressing your question. By investing in Sat, you become detached from Asat. The thoughts and all the stuff, the desires. hankerings, lamentations, etc. in the mind. The most powerful time to practice that is maybe the most challenging time, which is when you're chanting. And wherever the mind wanders, you bring the mind back. And wherever the mind, it's like training a monkey. The mind being the monkey. And monkeys can be trained. So now we'll go to a second example. This is Bhakti Siddhanta. He says there's two ways to control the mind. Neglect or beating the mind. He gives Prabhupada gave this example. The way to train a tiger, they capture a tiger and they starve him. And starve him. And starve him. He has no strength left. And then the animal trainer gives him a little food, so he gets some strength. And then later, a little more food. And so he sees the hand that's giving him the nourishment is, then the animal trainer can put his head inside the lion's mouth. They can do things with the lion that he couldn't do otherwise because he's trained him or tamed him. The mind is like that, neglect. Chatter, 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 you just don't pay attention. Neglect. So to neglect when there's chatter is you have to be attentive to something else. You've probably had the experience when you're doing something that's your mind is totally absorbed in. Someone could be calling your name or even tapping you on the shoulder, or all kinds of stuff is going on and you're just so absorbed in what you're doing, you're not even, time is passing and things are happening around you and you don't even notice it. Yeah? Similarly, so that chatter of the mind, a way to overcome it is neglect the chatter of the mind, and that's only possible when you're absorbed in something that you find attractive. And even if it's by discipline, you practice absorbing in the positive, and it reduces the negative. Then another is the stick. Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada would quote this. My Guru Maharaj would say, every night before you take rest, you beat your mind with a shoe 100 times. And it's not literally you get a shoe and bang your head. You metaphorically beat your mind with a shoe 100 times. And in the morning, 100 times with a broomstick. With discipline. Now that's, how do you do that? But the idea is tame the unruly mind. There's you, and then there's the mind, and they're like this discussion. They're different, not you. And it can be tamed by the conscious self. So there's withdraw from asat, invest in sat. Neglect that by absorption in something. Problem is we're fruitive. Passion. We're driven to do because we're going to get something. Passion. You do because the fruit of what you're going to do. And one thinks oneself the cause of the fruit. Karta aham. I'm the cause of the fruit. That's false ego. And we're used to it. It's what we live with, false ego. And the spiritual conception is not false ego, it's I take the position of being subordinate to Krishna, dependent upon Krishna, relying upon the strength of Krishna to carry me where I want to go, to Krishna. That's the investment in sat, thereby the strength to withdraw from asat. It takes some practice, and the power, the best power is bhakti. Not just the mechanical withdraw, but the devotional invest. And I don't go over there because it doesn't help my bhakti. It interferes with bhakti. I just got this letter just this afternoon from somebody in another part of the country. And he's making nice progress. Now he's being honest with himself and saying, you know, I still do time wasters, especially at work, because I have access to internet. By the afternoon, I'm bored. So I go to these sites that's, mostly it's kind of just news and browsing and stuff. I don't go to the bad ones. But it's just, I know it's time wasters. It's just distraction of the mind to stuff. And when I started this practice, when I have those intervals, I'm getting distracted and bored and drifty, I go to a place where I can read online Prabhupada's books. And I feel this whole, energy, spiritual energy come instead of the other thing. That's say yes to Sat and say no to Asat. And you just practice that, and you feel the Krishna connection, and the other subsides. But if you don't make the Krishna connection, the other's going to be making the chatter and jumping up and down. Pay attention to me. I'm tempted to tell a story. If there's another question, I'll tell a little story. The neglect and the stick. Bhaktisiddhanta's message. One time, here at the Potomac Temple, I was visiting, and I went with another devotee for a japa walk. And I went through the neighborhood. You know, the homes in that area, there's these giant homes and big landscape piece of land. So I was going through one of those neighborhoods. And this giant dog, as big as half a horse, just came charging down the hill. Woof, 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 woof. And here it's just me and this one other devotee. And it looked like he was going to eat us or something, like loud. And so I just thought of Bhaktisiddhanta's words and didn't pay him any attention. Just totally ignored him. And he made a bunch of noise when he got to the bottom of the hill, and then just kind of, I wasn't reacting or anything, so he just kind of shrugged his shoulders and went back up the hill. And I was thinking, wow, the mind. I wasn't going to invade, so he was protecting the territory, I wasn't going to go invade it, but it's like. Then another, the stick. I was teaching in Vrindavan, at the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education. Heard of that before? VIHE? It's okay. I was a teacher. And it's difficult to stay in that space. It's like a fishbowl. And it gets really intense. You stay the whole month inside the fishbowl. So I would have to go, I wanted to go for walks. So every morning, I'd go out the front gate, make a right, and go down. And one morning I just went so far. I was just absorbed in the holy name. It was really nice. But there was a whole pack of dogs, street dogs. When I went to their territory, it wasn't just one big dog, it was a whole pack of dogs. And they, you know how it works. One barks, and then all the others wake up and they bark, and they come out, they came out, showing their teeth and growling. So I had my danda with me. I just held my danda out like this, and and the big dog, the pack, the leader of the pack, looked at the stick, looked at the other guys, looked at the stick, looked at the other guys, went back and laid down. So neglect or stick? The mind. Discipline the mind. Go to Krishna, don't go over there. And just practice going over there. And when you practice going over there and practice going over there and practice, what happens? You go over there. It works. There's, you ever walk through a forest? I'm sure you have. We all have. So sometimes it looks like there's this path through the forest. How did I get a path through the forest? Because a bunch of people walked up and down the same place and then eventually became a path in the forest. So that's how you control the mind. You make a path that goes to Krishna. There's all this, noise, the chatter of the mind and stuff, distraction. Just take the path that goes to Krishna, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. The mind's going to go to Krishna instead of over there. And that other thing, is going to become jungle. And over here is the path. That's where your attention goes. So it's cultivation. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilana. Gradual cultivation. Becomes second nature. You just go, the mind goes to Krishna. Through the power of bhakti. For the pleasure of Krishna, and under the guidance of the teachers of bhakti. Okay, I think we're going to end. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Romapada Swami ki jai.
I brought with me some Mahaprasadam from Kishori temple. I'm going to walk around and pass them out. There's actually, some is from Tirupati in the box too. Yes, I see.